But let's talk about Man City Spurs. I mean, I was talking to Debo about it at the top of the show. Spurs continuing to be the boogeyman for Manchester City, but I just sort of felt like, I really felt like you cannot rule out Pep Guardiola. And I know you still can't rule him out, but I just did not expect it. Really impressive from Thomas Frank, especially considering knockback after knockback when it comes to signings. Morgan Gibbs-White, Eberechi Eze. So impressive from Spurs, wasn't it?
Yeah, Spurs look good. Yeah, they look really good. They look really well organised. They've got a system, and it's quite evident to see what they're doing. One thing that really struck me with the game was they're very man for man. And they love to high press. You know, you see Christian Romero in the first 10 minutes chasing down Haaland, making sure he doesn't get any room to breathe on the ball. No, it's annoying because I like Thomas Frank, but now it's I've got to congratulate him because he's a very good manager and Spurs were really, really good. And it is so weird in football, isn't it? It's just amazing how Spurs always seem to get one over City. Yeah. Every time City plays Spurs, you always think... And actually, before the game, some of us were in the office and we did say, I think Spurs will get something out of here. And then... on the flip side, for all that Spurs were really good at, you have to look at Manchester City. And again, 7 days in football seems like a long time.
I know, because you
watch the Wolves game, right? And then you think...
Well, you look at that, Reinders was mercurial, totally ran the show, announced himself in the Premier League in a way that I don't think many people do. To turn up first game and be so dominant in a Premier League fixture is really impressive. And you still can't take that away from him. But I would say... Wolves went 1-0 up in that game and it was offside. They had a couple of chances and I do think they exposed somewhat Manchester City's defensive frailties. I guess, why hasn't that been fixed? Because you'd think that, having brought in Pep Linders, having had a Club World Cup to try things out, that would be the thing that they're going to get right straight away.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Have you seen... Look, I'm not going to take credit for it, but have you seen that analysis from Jamie Carragher on Monday Night Football about how Pep Linders is trying to bring the Liverpool side of that defensive thing into Manchester City, and it's very high and it's very compact. And you saw the first goal, they got breached by that, and last week, even though the goal was ruled out for offside, they got breached by that. That might be the reason why City aren't clicking yet, because they're actually trying to find and play a new way of this defensive football. And I want to get your view on this because I think it's quite interesting. We talk about Manchester City, right? And we talk about... Well, not just Manchester City, but the Premier League. It's the best league in the world. It's all about, how technical the players are. But on Saturday, when you mentioned Reinders there, I looked at João Palhinha and Pape Sarr in midfield. And the one thing they had was energy and pace. And I always said at the back end of last season, City's midfield is slow. Very good technically, but the one thing, it lacks a lot of pace and a lot of tempo. What's the most important thing you think you need in the midfield? Is it technical ability? Is it pace? Or is it a blend of both?
Well, I think it has to be a bit of everything, doesn't it? And you look at Liverpool last season, they had everything in that, and I do think they still do this season. You look at what Arsenal have and how stats they are in the bench and how they've added. They've got a bit of everything. You've got the technique of Zubimendi. You've got, for me, Declan Rice is just sort of like box to box. He's not necessarily the fastest, but he's strong. You won't want to play against Declan Rice. He can play a pass. He can score a goal. And I think that City's issue might be, Luke, that they've brought in all of these players so quickly and no one's really been able to say, this is my position now. Yeah. You're still thinking Rodri is Man City's best player and he hasn't played for him for however long. And that's concerning, I think, for Manchester City fans. But having said that, I don't want to sort of go over the top and write City off, because I just think you never can. One thing I do want to ask you about is the goalkeeper situation. There's obviously these strong links with Donnarumma. James Trafford had a bit of a clanger, but I feel for him because he's been told to do that, and it's been drilled into him, despite the sort of his cognitive function saying this is clearly an idiotic pass to make. I'm going to do it anyway because Pep told me to, and I just sort of I don't like that in the game. If a keeper needs to lump it out to save the blushes, then do it.
Yeah, I see both sides of that, but you're a keeper, you can see what's in front of you, and you know that Sarr is literally closing down. Richarlison's there as well. It's a very... Look, I understand it's the risk and reward. I'll see it every week with David Ryan. It's like... Ooh, but then if you break the press, and you can play him, and then we're having a conversation about how good was it and how brave it is. And last week he was very good against Wolves. He looked quite commanding in all his aspects. He played out with the back really well. It's a difficult mistake. Look, I actually think... We're not talking about Trafford, but I think he was very lucky to stay on the pitch, to be honest.
Yeah, he was. I'm
still quite unsure how he didn't get sent off for a handball or bleed the knee in the chest. I'm still quite confused how he's still on the pitch. But yeah, look, you can't have a system and you can't have a philosophy and then make mistakes and then you can't banish someone for that. He's going to make mistakes. You're going to lose the ball. It happens. I mean, Vicario did it. I know Spurs are not as the same, but Vicario did it in the second half. Yeah. Nearly gave away a goal. Don't know why Haaland decided to pass it across the church. He just put the ball in the net. It's quite crazy. But yeah, you're right. It was Manchester City. It's weird because they lost and no one was really surprised because it's Spurs. However, if that was a different team and they lost 2-0, we all go, wow. But because it's Spurs and they've got that weird record over them and they've got their number. But you were right about the profiling because, you got Shirky in there and I'm watching him and I was like, I'm not quite sure if he's a 10. He was more productive on the right-hand side. He looked better when he was putting crosses in. They brought Marmoush in, who I think is an excellent player, but I'm pretty sure Marmoush was a striker.
Yeah.
And,
that's the strange thing.
And this is the thing.
And it doesn't fit out there, stuck out there on the wing.
And it's weird because, and this is like, we're going off a tangent here, but when you talk about Liverpool or we talk about Ekitike, I'll just buy Isak because he can play on the left. It's so easy to say that, but when you actually play the game, you don't do that. Like, Marmoush is a striker, but he can just drift out to the left. Yeah, you can drift out to left in game, but your main position is a striker. And then when you're playing on the wing, look, he had about 3 chances to score, and he could have scored, in the first 15 minutes, and we'd be talking about a different game here. But it's a little bit unfair at him, And then how does Pep do that? How does Pep juggle playing Erling Haaland and Marmoush together? There's so much rotation, there's so much flexibility, but it's hard to see how it works, And I hate doing this, and I hate bringing it up because it feels like it's such a we keep talking about it. It's such a rhetorical question, a repetitive question. But where does Phil Foden work in this?
You worry about him.
I am, generally, and I generally am worried because he came on after 70 odd minutes, so he wasn't the first player in Pep's mind, and I'm just kind of confused because I don't actually know where his best position is now in Manchester City, let alone England. Yeah. I don't know if you're going to bring him on and play him wide right. I don't know if you would. If Cherky's going to play there. I don't even know if Bernardo Silva's going to play there. Is he playing the 10? Does Marmoush drop into a 10? Does that allow Doku to play on the left? Savino is still a Manchester City player at the moment. There's abundance of talent there, but I haven't mentioned Phil Foden's name in that. And obviously he's good enough, but it's just
it's
where
bizarre.
and when.
And it's really puzzling because you know how good he can be. And yes, his form's dropped off, but I just feel that maybe there's a lot of players at Manchester City that have ever so slightly victim to massive instability in terms of the team. Like they don't know where they stand. Nobody knows what Manchester City's starting lineup's going to be other than Erling Haaland and potentially Diaz at the back because there's so much player change. Now we're going to continue our review of this at the weekend. So many more questions that need to be asked, not just about Man City and Spurs, but a vast array of other fixtures from the weekend. You're listening to the talkSPORT 2 Social with William Hill, 18 plus gambleaware.org. Next up, we're going to continue reflecting and we're going to make sure we get Luke's thoughts on a 5-star performance from the Gunners.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.